Hello, and welcome to today's Augustana Human Library session. The title of today's human book is Life, Love, Loss, Living. And this is the human book's abstract. Imagine taking the initial 911 call reporting your partner's death. Now think of how you'd recover from that. I found the love of my life and was suddenly alone. Since then, I have become involved with organizations such as Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Homicide Survivors, and Victim Services. Tune in to learn about how I turned the most tragic loss of my life into something great that honors my partner. Thank you all for being here today, and welcome Life, Love, Loss, Living.
And today I'm going to just kind of talk about, I'm going to share a very personal story. I've experienced some loss, and I'm sure many of us have. I lost my dad when I was 14. I lost my mom 5 years ago. But there's one significant person and some significant loss that I've recently experienced. Probably the most difficult one that I've ever gone through as an adult. And that experience pretty much changed my life and flipped it upside down, and just kind of had figuring out how to navigate that and kind of live afterwards. Her name was Chris, and I've got a photo of her. I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but her name was Chris, and we both grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And I met her 8 years ago, pretty much almost exactly to the day, on April 28th, 2012. I had just moved to Tucson, not native Tucsonan, and I joined a meetup group, and they were having an outdoor movie. And I had met her there and immediately was drawn to her. It was a potluck. I can remember what she made. It was this wild rice and veggie dish, and I made red velvet cupcakes, and just immediately drawn. I sat next to her at dinner. We talked about being from the Bay Area and how it was so awesome that two kind of Bay Area transplants kind of met in the desert, and just in awe of her. I can still see her smile. She had the most brightest, beautiful smile. She had like a hearty laugh. I can still hear it. I just remember that night being so happy. Like, my heart was so happy that I was just like standing next to her. And she, like, the whole movie, we couldn't really talk, but we were the last two to leave the event. We stayed out there. Gosh, it was in the desert at this outdoor, in someone's home. And we had stayed till almost like 2 a.m. just talking. And I can just remember it was so hard to like say goodbye, and just like wanting to keep talking to her and get to know her. And I remember watching her get into her she had this big white work truck, and watching her drive away and wondering when I was going to see her again. And I'm pretty sure I fell in love with her that night that I met her. And just the more I hung out with her, the more I fell in love with her. She was genuinely beautiful, like inside and out. Probably one of the most brightest souls I've ever met. Again, she had this contagious laugh, gorgeous smile, and she loved to be outdoors. She liked to hike. She ran. She rode her bike all the time. She loved to Zumba. We would Zumba together. There was always this joke that she found her hips dancing in Zumba classes. And I was not an outdoor person at all until I met her. She kind of formed my love of being outside, hiking. We had planned to backpack together. We rode our bicycles a lot, and being in Tucson, it's so hot. I'd always complain that I didn't want to ride my bike in the summertime. And she was just funny. And she would tell me that we would be our own personal swamp coolers because as we were outside, we'd sweat and then the wind would hit our bodies and we'd cool ourselves down. And I never really caught on to that personal swamp cooler theory, but I just loved being outside with her. She pretty much, we hiked all the time. Every holiday we'd hike. And I just loved being outdoors with her. And I'm really grateful that she kind of formed that love of being outside in me. She was also very handy. She remodeled her home inside and out all by herself. Electrical, plumbing. She redid the swamp cooler in her house, cabinetry, tile work, everything she did herself. So on the side of her regular job, she was kind of this handy woman and would fix homes and kind of remodel bathrooms and stuff for our friends and for her clients. And then in March of 2014, she actually did get her massage therapist license, and she was a wonderful masseuse. She's just as good at everything that she did. But I hope everyone has that one person that just, no matter how kind of crappy your day was, like you have your person and they just filled you with joy and happiness and love. And that's who Chris was to me. And she was that for so many people. And I loved her very much. And we were together for 2 years, and they were the best 2 years of my life. My previous job, sorry, I lost track. I have little notes here. Again, 2 years, great 2 years, normal coupley things. You know, we had our ups and our downs. We had some big downs, but it was really nice to know that we would always just kind of come back to that really deep love for each other and understanding. And the way she looked at me was the best feeling anyone could have. And I hope everyone has that person who looks at them like that. And she really did change my life for the better, being around her and having the honor of knowing her. The day she died, I was actually working as a 911 dispatcher here in Tucson for the Tucson Fire Department. I was working the night shifts. It was from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I was a call taker that morning. I remember it being 5:55 in the morning. My shift was just about to end, and I took my last call. And the caller in my ear was reporting a bicyclist struck at a corner, a cross street, a big main street here in Tucson, and that they thought the rider was dead. She lived 2 blocks away from that intersection. She had just texted me that she was going out. She didn't tell me what she was going to do again. She exercised every morning. Every morning she exercised. So I didn't know if she was out on a run or a hike or a bicycle. But again, it was so close to her house. And the minute that I got those cross streets, I knew something was wrong with this call. And I was supposed to keep it in my ear. But I transferred it to my partner who was working with me that morning. And I let her take the call, but I kept it in my ear so I could hear everything that was happening. And the caller reported a male in their 20s. And, the call taker was asking, all the normal 911 questions. And I just knew something was wrong about that call. When they hung up, I was supposed to do a shift change, and I just remember unplugging from my workstation and kind of grabbing my stuff, and I don't even remember getting in my car, but all I know is I drove straight to the scene. Chris looked like a male. She dressed like a male. And everything about that call felt so wrong. And I got to the scene, and I remember it being all barricaded up. And as I drove by, I was kind of already conflicted. Like, if I get down and it's not her, do I really want to see stranger dead? And then also, I think denial had set in, and I didn't want to know. So I kept driving by, and then just went to her house. She lived 2 blocks away. And I remember pulling up into her driveway. This is now a little bit after 6 in the morning, and I remember sending her a text message in my car, pretty much saying like, hey, I just took this 911 call of a bicyclist struck. Please just text me that you're alive so I can go home and sleep, because I had to go back to work at 6 o'clock that night to do a whole nother 12-hour shift. So I was really tired. And I sent that text, just tell me that you're alive, and I never got a reply. And I sat in her driveway for about an hour. And while I waited for her to come back from her morning exercise, I called all the hospitals. Nobody had a Chris in their hospital. I called my fire captain again to just check with the paramedic and the fire engine to just verify that the victim was a male, and everyone was still reporting a male. And I just thought, okay, I'm gonna go home and she'll text me when she gets home. And I never got a text. At around 9, I think the city was waking up, and I had just been laying in bed. I don't remember sleeping. But at around 9, our good friend, who was scheduled for a 10 o'clock massage that morning, texted me. And I think the city was waking up, so there was already the news reports in the news that a male had been killed at that intersection, unidentified. But everyone started texting me if I had heard from Chris, which sent me into this whole new round of, where is she? I hadn't heard from her. I remember getting into my car and just going to the nearest hospital that a trauma patient would go to, and like walking in and asking them if they had Chris, and they didn't. Calling all the rest of the hospitals in the city, no one had Chris. Calling my captain again, and at the time, our 911 dispatch center was separate from police and fire. So the fire side only needed to know what's wrong with you and where you're at, and then they'll send the engine and medic. But the police side, they can put more information, more details in the calls than we could. At that time, because of HIPAA laws, privacy laws here in the States, I couldn't get any information from the police side. So I was still at a loss because no one had heard from her, and the news was reporting an unidentified male. I ended up getting in touch with her ex, and we put our heads together and end up getting into her home. And it's now 10:30, and we get into her house, and her wallet is home and her cell phone is home. And we know, we also open up her shed, and she was a bike collector. She was really a bike hoarder, but she had so many bicycles, but we knew that one was missing. And we end up at the scene. Again, we walk 2 blocks together, and I remember being on that corner, and again, still no confirmation, and seeing all the markings on the street. There was like a shoe and pedals and socks, and I don't know how I kept it together, but her ex did not. And I'm pretty sure we looked like 2 crazy ladies at this intersection as people were driving by. It's almost the afternoon now, and we're at this corner, and an off-duty police officer drives by and pulls over. And comes up to us and asks us what we're doing, and we're trying to tell them that we know someone was killed here this morning. We are trying to find Chris, and we don't know where she's at. And as that conversation is happening, I get a phone call, and it's my fire captain asking me where I'm at, because the Tucson Police Department have to talk to me. And I tell them that I'm with an officer now, and we'll meet them at Chris's house. So her ex and I get into the back of this police car, and I take the longest quarter-mile ride of my life, and just this gut feeling that something bad was about to happen, but still trying to be logical about it and thinking it's not anything Chris related. This is all still normal. And we pull up to her house, and I can remember more police cars pulling up and thinking that this is really bad. And I remember my fire captain pulling up and thinking that this is really, really bad. And as they're gathering outside front of her house, I'm on the phone with another friend who works for the University of Arizona Police Department. And she is telling us that they have identified the victim of the crash that morning by identifying marks and tattoos. And an officer can hear us on the phone. She says that she was at the scene that morning, and asked if I have a picture of Chris or to describe her tattoos. And I can remember kind of being rude, and I've apologized for that, but I was like, you tell me what the tattoos looked like. And she talks about a ship. Chris had just gotten this really beautiful ship tattoo on her right arm, and I think lots of people have ship tattoos, and it's not Chris. And then they tell me about a kind of animal. She described a cougar, and I think lots of people have animal tattoos, and it's not Chris. But we had just gone on our last vacation together. We had gone to this beautiful ranch about an hour away in southern Arizona, and we had taken pictures together. And I just grab my phone and I pull up her photo, the best photo that I can, of the tattoo that she's describing, the animal tattoo. And I know what she's talking about because Chris also had just gotten a new tattoo of a calico coyote howling at the moon, which was representative of her cat, her calico kitty cat that got eaten by a coyote named Indy. So I pull that photo up and I kind of zoom in, and I'm on the porch and the police officer is on the other side, and I just kind of flip my phone around and show it to her. And with a head nod, she just nods her head. I found out that my partner, the love of my life, was killed. And that was on Wednesday, June 18th of 2014. And a day that changed my life forever. You know, I always thought that, you know, if you get notifications like that, it'd be like in the movies where, you know, someone knocks on the door and they say, like, we regret to inform you that so-and-so has died, but all I got was a head nod. And that was really, really weird for me because there were no words expressed. But that's how it happened. And Chris was only 38 years old. And I had no clue what I was going to do with myself. She was killed by an impaired driver here. He was this young man on spice, which is synthetic marijuana. And he dropped his girlfriend off at work that morning, took a hit of this drug, got in his car, and was speeding down our intersection, swerved around a car at a red light, went through the light, and hit her from behind. Luckily, he didn't flee the scene. He took out 2 other cars, which made his car stop. But we were able to know who he was, and he did go to jail. We had a long, and I won't even say long, because I know a lot of cases here are drawn out for many years. We were lucky in that sense that it was only about 1.5 years of court that we had to go through. He pled guilty. He was sentenced to 9 years in jail and 5 years probation, and he'll be getting out soon, in a couple of years. But that was a pretty difficult 1.5 years of my life. But because of that court experience, I got connected with some really good organizations, such as Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I had a victim advocate there with me in court. Homicide Survivors, which is in my county that I live in here. I got connected with that organization, and our county's victim services department were really supportive. And I pretty much, within that first year after she was killed, I started to volunteer for them. I also did I knew very quickly that this was going to affect me pretty badly, and I do a really good job of kind of pushing things aside and not really working on those things, but I didn't want to do that with Chris. So I got help right away. Within that first 2 weeks, I found this book called The Grief Recovery Work, and there are grief recovery specialists in Tucson, and I was able to do the work in a group setting that was just focused on the loss of Chris. So I did that immediately. I got back into my therapist chair and knew I needed to talk that out, and I did real good mental health kind of preventative measures I thought I was taking, because I thought if I get ahead of it, I'll be okay. I'm so glad that I did that, because when the dark hit me, when the darkness and the sadness and the reality of it hit me, I went to a really, really, really sad place. And I don't think if I had done all of that work to kind of prepare me for it, I don't know if I would have been able to kind of come out of it. And I definitely don't think that I would be able to volunteer at those organizations to kind of help all the other victims and their families kind of get through as best as they can without all of that work. And it helped me greatly. I actually did a second round of group grief recovery work specifically for Chris again about a year later, because I thought, oh yeah, I needed to do a lot more work on that grief and on that loss, because there was some other stuff that I guess I didn't handle. But a lot of mental health went into it. And then I finally found some feet and started doing all these cool things, like she was cremated, so I started to take her wherever I went, places that we had planned to go, places that she had told me we'd go together, or places that
she said were pretty. The first place I took her was back to California. Took her back to California and threw some of her ashes in the Pacific Ocean. I took her to Alaska with me. I'd never been. The Christmas after her death of 2015. And I went to Alaska and, you know, started to find my adventurous feet again. And I did this wilderness tour and put her ashes in this beautiful bay. It's called Beluga Bay, and it was gorgeous. And she'd always talked about going backpacking. So in 2017, I had never been. I hiked the Grand Canyon for the first time, and I brought her with me to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and put her in the Colorado River. And that was an amazing experience. We have a bike ride here in Tucson called El Tour, and it's like over 100 miles, and people from around the world come to ride in this race. And a group of us, a couple of her friends, we all rode El Tour for her. I rode the kiddie ride, the kiddie route, which was like a 5-mile route. And you get the same medal and you get the same award that the 100+ mile riders get. So I always tell people I rode El Tour, even though I only rode about 5 miles, and I went through the finish line with a bunch of 5-year-olds on little bikes. But I've got the medal to show for that. But we put some of her ashes on the route there. New Mexico, I took her to Mexico. I finally went across the border to Mexico. It was only 4 hours away from here. So I put her in a beach in the Sea of Cortez. Just all of these things kind of were inspired by her, and that I truly love doing now. I actually went back to the Grand Canyon and did it again just this last October. She's always in my pack. I have little sand art stars that I keep with me in my packs, my hiking packs. I travel with her all the time. You know, all of these things that I've had happen to me that were positive. I purchased my first house the year after she was killed, and I just, you know, it was like this kind of happy, sad moment because I had to find a house that was like fully remodeled because I didn't have her here to like remodel with me. And as I was looking for a house, she would always be the one that could see its potential, you know, and she would tell me things about, you know, we can change the windows or we can fix the tile and we can do all of these things ourselves, but I didn't have her here to do that. So I had to buy a house that was fully remodeled that I think she'd love. I became a grandmother a couple months actually after she was killed. She wasn't here for that. Just I've had so much joy in my life. And there's just always that mix of happy, sad because she's not here to share those moments with me. And, you know, it's kind of, again, like it's this, it's a new feeling that I say I have. I say that I'm happy, sad because I have had love in my life again and I've had happy in my life again. There's just always that sadness that she's not here to kind of share that with me. The biggest thing that some of the other things, like I said, that I did was I started volunteering for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, where I share my story with a bunch of DUI offenders. I also help facilitate their Power of Youth and Power of Parent programs, and I facilitate their victim impact panels. I actually worked for MAD just about 2 years ago. I worked for them for a whole year. So because of her, I don't even think I would have even been connected with that organization, but I was able to turn that kind of volunteering into a career that has spawned me going back to school for social services and social work. So actually next month I will gain my basic certificate in social work from the local community college here, and trying to get my associates and then onto my bachelor's, but I'm kicking it out at night. But social work has been something good that I've chosen to do, because of what I've gone through, because of this specific loss. And I share my story with, I volunteer for Homicide Survivors, the Pima County Victim Services Department. I share with them. They do a death notification training class for volunteers. It's a big class twice a year that they recruit volunteers. And because I've had such a positive experience with the Pima County Attorney's Office, they always invite me to share my story. And they were phenomenal with their support. Again, I had victim services there the morning of notification. They were there through the whole 1.5-year court process. And they helped, they have like an assistance program, which helped cover some of the therapy and grief work that I did that wasn't covered by insurance. So I've had such an amazing experience, and not many people can say that, when they're talking about homicide. But I had the best attorney, just positive experience, and I'm very grateful for that. So those are some of the cool things that I've been able to do, and really it started off to kind of, I guess my work with MAD really was just to try to prevent, and I always used to say like I did this for Chris. And now I really do it for myself, because I think it needs to be done. I think sharing my story and trying to help others get through some difficult times is my new path, and a path that I don't think I would have chosen, that I was kind of thrown on, but I'm okay with it, and I love what my future looks like and what it could look like, later on when I get that degree and I get to do some more work in our community. But the most recent thing that I got to do, which I'm really, really proud of, was while I was working at MAD back in December of 2018, we had a presenter come from the Department of Corrections here in Arizona. He came and kind of presented a program called the Victim Offender Dialogue Program, and it pretty much gets victims and offenders in touch with each other for conversation. And after his presentation was made, I pulled him aside and told him that, yes, I work for MAD, but I'm also a victim survivor, and I would love to be on your waiting list when your program launches. It launched in March of last year, 2019, and I was the first to sign up for that program. And it was almost a year later from when I saw that presentation, but we met monthly. I had to fill out a bunch of surveys. He had to do a background check. He had to talk to therapists. And it's a voluntary program that both the offender and the victim have to agree to participate in. We fill out surveys. Through this process, I learned that her killer, in jail, worked in the kitchen, and he was a baker. And that was significant for me because Chris was a baker and she loved to bake bread. So that was like, wow, he's making bread. And I learned that because of the process that he started with me for the Victim Offender Dialogue program, he also enrolled in college in jail and is going to be a drug rehabilitation specialist. So another positive outcome, I think, personally, that her offender is going to hopefully get out one day and do something better as well with his life. But after almost a year of all of these back and forth meetings with our corrections officer facilitator on December 21st of last year, 2019, just a few months ago. I drove 2 hours to Globe, Arizona, and did the most difficult thing that I have ever done. And I sat across the table from him and got to talk to him for about 2 hours. And I remember that morning driving there. I had to leave at like 6 in the morning here, and I had taken a highway that I had never been on, and I got to watch this gorgeous sunrise. And I remember some of Chris's favorite songs kind of randomly coming on the radio. And on my way there was this group of about 60 bicyclists riding on the freeway. And I thought, of course, she would set me up like this to kind of have this beautiful morning and prepare me and kind of give me this beautiful sunrise and these little reminder that everything would be okay. And it was one of the most, I can't explain it. It was a very profound experience for me, and I want to share. After, again, I sat with him for about 2 hours, and right after I left, in the parking lot of the corrections facility, I wrote this and I posted it on social media, and I'm going to read it to you because reading it today, 4 or 5 months later, it still holds true for me. But I wrote, again, this was minutes after I had met him. I wrote, "My kryptonite is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of missing a moment, fear of missing an experience, fear of disappointing my family, fear of not taking that chance, fear of loss, fear of not finding love again, fear of not living my best life, fear of being less than, fear of not being worthy." On June 18, 2014, a young man intoxicated on spice got behind the wheel and killed the love of my life while she was on her morning bicycle ride. A little over a year ago, while working at Mothers Against Drunk Driving, a new program was being presented called the Victim Offender Dialogue, which I'm sure you've seen on television dramas, but this is new to Arizona, having been implemented in March of 2019. I immediately signed up and was the first to do so in the state. It was a long process, but this morning, I looked this fear in the face and sat across the table from the man who took Chris's life. He looked exactly as I remembered him from all the court hearings, and it lasted about 2 hours. The words exchanged are private, but the feelings are not. I didn't do this to find closure. I didn't do this to tell him that he derailed my perfectly happy life with Chris. The opportunity presented itself, and I just knew it was the next layer and piece of my journey in healing. I'm still processing, but I'll just say one thing about this morning. This was by far the most brave and vulnerable thing that I've ever done in my entire adult life. Fear didn't win today. Hope did. Hope for continued growth as a person. Hope for continued healing. Hope that my dreams didn't end on June 18th, 2014. Hope that my journey encourages someone else to be better. And I'm so proud of myself. You know, I've met so many amazing people in the almost 6 years since she was killed. One is a Mothers Against Drunk Driving speaker who lost her sister-in-law to an impaired driver. And when she shares her story, she sometimes references the 3 C's of life, right? Choices, changes. Choices, chances, and changes. And that you gotta make the choices to take the chance or your life will never change. And that sums up pretty much how I've been living my life since Chris was killed. Making those difficult choices, taking those scary chances, you know, whether it's a new job or a chance on a new love, even though I'm so scared to lose again. Loss and me are not friends. Um, but making those choices and taking those chances to change for the better. Because I think we all deserve to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And I can't think of another or a better way to honor the people that we've loved and who we have lost than to live a life that they'd be proud of and that you could be proud of. So that's really what I've done with the losses in my life, not just Chris related. I try to think, would my mom be proud? Would my dad be proud? Would Chris be proud? And it's really nice and comforting to know that I think they would be. And I'm going to continue to try to give back to my community and try to help people heal. And one of the first things I do whenever I see anyone who's lost anyone, whether it's natural death or any type of loss, I 100% recommend the grief recovery method. It's a book. You can buy it on Amazon. You could do the work by yourself or with a friend, or if you have a grief recovery specialist in your area, you can do it in a group setting or work with them. But it helped me tremendously, and I still use it to this day on all types of loss. But really just trying to remember all the love that I've shared with the people who are no longer with me, and to just try to live a life that they'd be proud of. And that's my story. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions? I'm an open book. Anyone?
Anyone? Well, I think there is one funny thing in your experience, Jamie, and that is when you were first seeing Chris. And the two of you thought nobody knew you were together. Everybody knew you were together, because you were just such a light. And Chris did have the most amazing smile and laugh. And
Yeah.
we take Chris places with us too.
You have her star.
Yes, we're so cautious with how much we take out every time. This is going to last the rest of our lives.
I have more if you need more.
But we do spread it when we go to places that we've talked with Chris and Jamie about going to and such. So does anybody else have questions?
Yeah, so I left out that part that when Chris and I first met, again through that meetup group, we devised this plan and set up like Thursday dinners. It was a weekly Thursday dinner that we held, and it was our secret and our way to like get together and just to hang out. And yeah, for a long time, we thought no one knew that I was crushing on her so bad, and that was funny.
Yeah.
I wish I had a better picture. This was of her, she rode in this ride in New Mexico. It was a 3-day ride, and this was at the Continental Divide after she had to climb like this 6,000-foot climb on her bicycle. And I love that picture of her. She was just an amazing woman. And the light that Nancy's talking about, I think that's just all Chris. I think she had this amazing light. And again, when you were around her, we're so happy. And I hope everyone has that one person that just brings out that light in you, And that's who she was.
Yeah, she had endless energy and was up for any adventure possible. We were hiking once, the three of us and somebody else, I forget. And it was getting dark,
So, Jamie and I, very sensible, responsible hikers, we should head back. And Chris was all about, no, when it gets good and dark, then you go with the moonlight. Like, we're not falling down the side of a mountain or getting bit by a rattlesnake or a mountain lion or something when we're not prepared. And she was just disappointed because she's like, well, of course we can do this, because she would do it by herself.
Yeah.
She was really quite remarkable. So, Karen says, thank you very much for sharing your story, and you should be proud of yourself for coming so far since your loss. My cousin was killed by an impaired driver about 20 years ago, and his daughter has done pretty much the same as you, giving back to the community. She has become a speaker at high school, speaking about drinking, drugs, and driving. She has also written a book of her experience of losing her father, and now it has changed her life. Kudos for being strong. Jamie
Nice.
kind of undersells what she's done. My experience of Jamie before Chris's death was that she didn't public speak, period. Now she speaks in front of, hundreds of professional athletes at a time or something.
Oh yeah.
And it's just, you've done amazing stuff, Jamie.
Thank you.
Peggy Sue, oh, you left her in tears. How does that happen? What are the odds that you get the call? It's so very beautiful that she has inspired you to take on so many thrilling adventures since. What a legacy she has left you with, and what a tribute to her. Also appreciate so much that you spent that time with the offender. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm so happy that I did that. It's a weird feeling or expression to say happy, but it was probably the best thing that I could have done. I didn't get anything negative. It was just another positive experience from something so tragic, and to know that he's going to go and hopefully do that and help rehabilitate drug users. I even invited him to speak with me at MAD. How awesome would that be if he shared his offender story, because MAD does have offender share in front of these other court-ordered offenders to take the class, and then I come up and share my story, and just to see us both kind of working together to prevent these tragedies, so I hope he does it. I'm his biggest cheerleader. I really am. I hope he does something really good with his time, because if he doesn't, then it'll be for naught, like her loss will be for nothing. And I hope he does something well. I hope I've inspired him to do something good.
Well, and as much as the court process was only a year and a half, any of us that were around would always go with Jamie whenever there was something. And I remember the first time seeing him across the room was like a horrible thing. And for Jamie to come from that, horrible, probably hate-filled place to now, I just think is remarkable.
Yeah, some parts are a blur.
Mm-hmm.
But I just know everything I've done that has been healthy and positive, I really do think it was all Chris. That's what she would have done. She wouldn't have wanted me to do anything different. So just, making those choices, even though they are hard and you want to stay angry and you want to stay mad and you want to stay in that sad place, they wouldn't want you to do that. You hear everyone saying, you would want to, keep living, and and it really is true, and it comes down to choice. So I think we all have that. We have it inside us to make those good choices, to be proud of yourself that these things can kind of break you, but you can still mend yourself. And thanks for letting me share.